Hi, I'm Abby from Ratings.com. Today we'll be doing a review of the massive 85-inch Hisense UX. It's a new premium TV in the 2023 Hisense lineup, higher than the popular U8K. But there's a catch. It's a limited release in North America. This means it's only available in this large size, and well, there just aren't that many units available. It's a different story in Europe, where the UX KQ is available in more sizes, from 55 to 85 inches. It's different as it's advertised to have a higher refresh rate and uses the Vida Smart platform. Because of that, this review is only valid for this North American version. What makes this TV so unique is that it features 20,000 mini LEDs with 5,000 dimming zones, more than any other TV that's come out in 2023. But what does this mean for its performance? And is it worth getting if you can find it? Well, we'll answer that soon, but first let's look at the design. It has a rather unique look with a bulky panel, mainly because the speakers are integrated into the sides of it, which are slanted towards the back. It comes with long feet that you can adjust in 2 positions. The wide position is ideal for placing a soundbar in front, or you can put them in a narrow position, which is beneficial if you have a small table. They also support the screen well with minimal wobble. The back of the TV is where it looks different from other premium models. The screws are visible throughout, and it even has a dedicated subwoofer in the middle. Sure, it isn't the nicest looking in the back, but really, would you be watching the back? The one downside is that there isn't anything for cable management, so your cables will just be dangling from the sides. You'll probably need proper cable clips or tracks to tidy your setup. Another thing to note is that the inputs are set into the back of the TV, so they can be hard to reach if it's wall-mounted. As for the inputs, it offers a good selection of ports, including a tuner that supports ATSC 3.0, so you can watch over-the-air channels in 4K in the US. There are 4 HDMI ports, and 2 offer HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, so you can connect your gaming consoles or PC to these ports. One of them is also the eARC port, which supports audio pass-through with any advanced format, like from DTS and Dolby Atmos. If you connect a soundbar or receiver to it, you only get one other HDMI 2.1 port for your premium gaming devices. One thing to know is that the eARC doesn't properly pass 7.1 signals through LPCM, as sound only comes out of 2 speakers. This is mainly a concern if you connect your Nintendo Switch, which only supports LPCM. While we're on the topic of sound, the built-in speakers aren't anything special, even if Hisense advertises a bunch of sound features and a 4.1.2 setup. Of course, it's fine if you want to listen to shows with basic dialogue, but like any other TV, it doesn't produce much bass. Just get a proper sound setup for the best sound experience. Now that we know what's on the outside, let's turn this thing on! The included remote is small, with some buttons for popular streaming services, and it supports Google Assistant. You can ask it to open apps, search for content, or switch inputs. There's also a mic built into the TV for hands-free voice control, but if you're concerned about privacy, there's a switch to turn it off. The TV turns on pretty quickly, and the first thing you'll see is the homepage of the Google TV Smart platform, which is fairly easy to use. You get all your pinned apps and suggested content in one place. Like all other smart platforms, there are ads though, and there's no way to completely turn them off. Besides that, the interface runs smoothly, and the Google Play Store has a massive selection of apps you can choose from. You'll notice a glossy screen coating as we continue looking at the TV. It does a fantastic job at reducing glare from bright sources, but like some other higher-end TVs, there's rainbow smearing across the screen. This can get distracting if you have a bright light on the screen, like if you place it opposite a window with direct sunlight. Another thing about its screen finish is that it includes an ultra-wide viewing angle layer. This helps result in a decent viewing angle, so the image remains consistent when watching from the sides. Although it looks darker from really wide angles, like if you're standing next to the TV, it's still fine for most wide seating areas. Considering its large size, you can easily invite everyone over to watch your favorite movie or the big game. Okay, that's cool, but let's move on to the fun part, the picture quality, and in particular, the contrast. The local dimming feature helps display extremely deep blacks next to bright highlights, and its contrast is higher than most other LED TVs. The black levels are so low that they go beyond what we can measure with our tools. The most important thing is that this TV performs extremely well in darkrooms, which is ideal for watching movies. This is thanks to the number of dimming zones. With 5,000 of them, each zone is small. This results in minimal blooming, and while it isn't as good as an OLED, it's still one of the best LED TVs. Even the algorithm of the local dimming feature performs well. It keeps up with rapid objects, but there are times when small, fast-moving objects dim to the point where they almost disappear. Besides that minor issue, another advantage of this mini LED backlighting is that it gets extremely bright in SDR. This means that bright rooms are no challenge for this TV. It does have an aggressive ABL, which means large areas of bright colors are dimmer than smaller areas. But it isn't bad enough to be distracting when watching content like sports. It even maintains that high peak brightness in HDR, especially with small highlights, as it reaches over 3,000 nits in some scenes. This means bright objects really pop against the rest of the image. One downside of the HDR performance is that the PQ EOTF tracking isn't that accurate, and most scenes are brighter than intended. There's also a sharp cutoff at the peak brightness, resulting in a loss of details in bright objects. It even seems to perform differently with some test patterns, as it's much better with a 10% window, but that isn't representative of most content. Keeping with the topic of HDR, it displays a wide range of colors in both the common DCI-P3 and the wider Rec 2020 color spaces. Most colors are a bit off, but overall it has good tone mapping and images are realistic. It even has a fantastic color volume, meaning it displays most bright and dark colors well. While it delivers impressive picture quality when watching HDR movies, you'll also be happy to know it supports both Dolby Vision and HDR10+ advanced formats. This means you can watch any content in the format it comes in, and it's certified as IMAX Enhanced to further improve your movie watching experience. While the contrast, brightness, and color gamut are important for watching HDR content, there are other things to consider when watching SDR content. One is the color accuracy, which is decent enough before calibration. Except that most colors are off, there are minor white balance issues, and even the color temperature is on the warm side, resulting in a red tint. Gamma is also too high, meaning most scenes are darker than intended. Sure, we just listed everything wrong with it, but you likely won't notice this unless you're an expert. But that said, it just isn't as good as some other high-end TVs. Image processing is another thing to consider when watching content in SDR and HDR. Having great picture quality is a bonus, but it doesn't add much without good processing. The Hisense Engine X processor mainly has some good things, but there are some not so good things. One of the pros is that it upscales lower resolution content well. This is beneficial if you watch content from cable boxes or still use a DVD player, and it does a good job of keeping details. There's a bit of blurriness, and while it isn't the absolute best TV for processing, it's still good. The same can be said about the TV's ability to smooth out content from low-quality sources, like streaming apps that use compression. This means that you still see details and there isn't any macro blocking, which is great if you binge Netflix or Disney Plus shows. The main downside of its processing is that it has disappointing gradient handling. This means there's banding with shades of similar colors, like in scenes with a sunset. This is a concern for watching HDR content, but luckily its gradient smoothing feature does a good job of reducing this banding. Alright, we know that it offers good picture quality when watching content, but how does it perform for gaming? Luckily, it's just as good even when gaming. You get the same deep blacks and bright highlights for a vivid gaming experience. As for the gaming features, it has a 120Hz refresh rate, which is standard on most TVs, but it doesn't support anything higher like the Hisense U8K, which goes up to 240Hz. It supports all common formats of VRR, like FreeSync, G-Sync, and HDMI Forum VRR to reduce screen tearing. There is one odd quirk about it though, as it doesn't support HDR and FreeSync at the same time with older AMD graphics cards, but HDR and VRR work together on other sources. The TV is a good choice to connect to a gaming console. Thanks to its HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, it can take full advantage of both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, as there aren't any issues. It is advertised to support Dolby Vision at 4K up to 120Hz on the Xbox, but it didn't work when we tried it. We were still limited to a 60Hz refresh rate and Dolby Vision on the Xbox. Of course, supporting these features is one thing, but it's also important to have good gaming performance. Overall, the TV performs very well and has an excellent response time, but like the Hisense U7K and U8K, the response time changes depending on the refresh rate. There's more overshoot at a refresh rate above 100Hz than below it. So this change in performance can be more distracting when gaming with VRR on than when playing with a fixed refresh rate. Regarding motion handling, the backlight of the TV always flickers at 4000 Hz, but it doesn't create any image duplication. The last important factor for an excellent gaming experience is the input lag. It does have low enough input lag for a responsive feel, and while it isn't as low as some other TVs, it's still fine for most gamers. So, now that we know how it performs, this brings us to the main question. Should you buy this TV? If you can find it and want such a big 85-inch TV, you'll surely be very happy with it. It offers better picture quality than most other mini LED TVs in 2023, with extremely deep blacks, bright highlights, and vivid colors. It even performs well for gaming thanks to its HDMI 2.1 bandwidth and low input lag. And although there are some quirks with its motion handling, it isn't too much to worry about. While it's an excellent overall TV, the biggest downside is that it isn't easy to find and you can't get it in smaller sizes. It's also pretty costly, so if you want something with better value that you can get in a smaller size, check out the Hisense U8K. It's more lower end than the UX, but it still offers excellent performance. It also features mini LED backlighting, and while it doesn't have as many dimming zones as the UX, it displays deep blacks and gets very bright. It even improves in some areas, like its color accuracy and PQ EOTF tracking, and it supports a higher refresh rate for gaming. That said, it has a slower response time and has the same motion issues. If you want something big and don't mind spending more on a TV with better processing, check out the Sony X95L. The main advantage of getting this TV is that it improves in upscaling and smoothing out low-quality content. It delivers everything you'd want in a TV for a home theater setup, and like the Hisense, it also gets bright and displays deep blacks. That said, it has a lot fewer dimming zones, and the algorithm doesn't keep up with fast-moving objects as well as the Hisense. The Hisense pops a bit more in HDR though, so the Sony isn't an upgrade in all areas. Well, that's all for the Hisense UX. If you want to learn more, check out the written review on the website. The link is in the description below. As always, stay tuned to this channel for more TV reviews. Bye!